If I had a dollar for any time I or one of my followers started a question with, "Am I bisexual if?" I would not be making YouTube videos. So today I really wanted to talk about all of the different ways that I've kind of questioned my own sexuality and how I've come to this place where now I am very loud and out and proud bisexual on the internet, and kind of give you all a peek into what that thought process looks like, as well as hopefully answer some of your questions that you pose to me over and over and over again that kind of amount to, hey, am I a bisexual if? But before we jump into all of that, my name is Evelyn. I am the internet's favorite bi big sister. I am also a certified intimacy coordinator for film and television, which means I am obsessed with talking about queer people and how we are presented in media and in the world. If you haven't already, make sure you pop that subscribe button, hit the little bell, because my bisexual audacity does not allow me to remember to tell people when I post videos. I think a core part of the bisexual experience is having a moment where you sit down and ask yourself, am I bisexual? And you would think by definition that would be an easy conversation to have, like, oh, am I attracted to more than one gender? If yes, check here, you're bisexual, here's your flag, here's your anxiety, here's your iced coffee, have fun, kid. But like pretty much everything in life, it is simply not that simple. There is so much anxiety with bisexual people, and I remember feeling this exact same anxiety of making sure that you're right. Because bisexuality is this idea that, yes, I can be attracted to more than one gender all of the time, forever. Like, this is who I am. And especially in a society where we often are in monogamous relationships, that means eventually you're going to settle down with one of those. And I think the anxiety of where you feel like you end up on the Kinsey scale when you think about that future partner is one of the biggest things that bisexuals struggle with. What that looked like for me is when I first started realizing that my sexuality was not straight, I really struggled to understand what being bisexual really meant for me. And I remember at the very beginning of kind of my learning about myself and trying to understand this part of me, it was like, okay, well, I can see myself dating and marrying a man. Can I see myself doing the same with a woman? And I think initially that kind of came to like a, I don't really think so place. And I hear this a lot. A lot of people that are early on in their queer journey, particularly from women, of being like, I think women are beautiful and I can absolutely see myself having sex with them, but I just don't know if I would see myself romantically involved with a woman, like in a long-term relationship, or if I don't see myself romantically attracted to them the same way I see men. Now, I'm a curious person, so I really wanted to dig into like why I was feeling that way. And the further I dug, the more we hit compet in this, because so much of how we visualize our partners, so much how we visualize who we're going to end up with really comes from the things we see in our world. It comes from the books we read, the movies we watch, the people we see on the street. The love that we are exposed to drastically shapes how we perceive our attraction to other people and where it might lead. And so for someone like me, I know for a fact that a lot of this idea that like I couldn't see myself dating a woman, I mean, it was because I had no template for what that might look like for me and for someone like me. I the only lesbian couples I'd seen, they looked nothing like me and acted nothing like me, and so there was nothing my brain could quite wrap around in like what would it look like to really date a woman. And beyond that, I was terrified. There's a big difference for many of us in the idea of like, oh, I could go out with somebody, I could flirt with somebody, I could kiss somebody, I could sleep with somebody, but like introducing a same-sex partner to your family and committing yourself to being in a relationship with a same-sex partner when there's this way easier, more socially acceptable version over here, that I think is a barrier that takes people a long time and a lot of self-reflection to get through. And I don't say this to ruffle the feathers or kind of insult anybody that still feels like they are, more hetero-romantic than they are homo-romantic, but I think that when we really dig deep and we examine the idea of romance and what that means, so much of what we perceive as romance is, are you able to be in a long-term committed partnership with somebody? And we see this all the time. I mean, like, I would like to point out to a lot of the people that I know that say things like that you have long-term, deep, loving relationships with your friends that are of the same gender. And so the idea that you somehow cut off that ability to go deeper with the same gender at sex, to me, it just feels really preposterous. And I mean, that's what I arrived at in my own journey, was that, like, the idea that I couldn't form a deep, loving, romantic connection with someone of the same gender as myself, or it was really just rooted in this fear of being, like, fully gay, like perceived in a fully queer relationship. But that brings me to my other sort of am I bisexual if question that I feel like I asked myself and a lot of people ask themselves, which is, am I bisexual if I'm more attracted to my same gender than I am people of the opposite gender or non-binary people? Like, is that still being bisexual? And we will have this debate, I think, until the ends of the earth. But if you're asking me, just from my little perspective here, if you feel you have the capacity for attraction to multiple genders in any way, that falls under the bisexual umbrella. And this is really funny for me because bisexual is kind of the umbrella we use to encapsulate all of the multisexual identities, all of the smaller identities. And I've identified as bisexual since I came out. And that's been like almost like 10 or 12 years now. But when I look at my personal spectrum of attraction, it actually aligns much more with being what we would call pansexual, which is that I experience equal attraction to pretty much any gender presentation. For me, being attracted to somebody has very little to do with their presented gender, and it really then comes down to the person themselves. Like, do I find this particular person beautiful? Do I find this particular person magnetic to me? Am I drawn to them in a certain way? But I hear a lot from people across all ages and experience levels with their sexuality of being in a place where they find themselves more consistently attracted to a certain gender, be that a different gender than theirs, be that their same gender. And this is where I think a lot of anxiety lies for bisexual people, which is if that's the case, like, shouldn't I just start calling myself, well, pretty much most of the time I act like this, so that should be my real identity. And I think that really traces back to this idea that there is somehow like a limited number of gay cards we have to give out to people. And that, like, if you aren't actively sleeping with as many same-sex partners as you are opposite-sex partners, then, like, you need to get out. You need to leave the queer community. And that is simply not the case. And as you guys, if you've been on this channel for a minute here, you know that for me, the idea of your sexuality being this, like, big deal that you need to define yourself with is something I actively want to move past as a society, where effectively queerness just becomes the norm. The idea that you could fall anywhere on the attraction spectrum and live a beautiful, happy life with people, I think that should be the end goal as like humanity. That whether you're like, oh, I'm pretty much only attracted to people of the opposite gender, that's who I'm going to end up with, that's what I'm going to do, or wherever you fall in that, it should not be something that limits you or restricts your ability to have a happy and fulfilled life in our society in any way. So coming from that perspective, I am much more of the mind of, like, if you see yourself being attracted to anybody that is not strictly the opposite gender, here is your gay card, have fun, have a flag, hang out with us. I think there should be no barrier to entry in queerness, and I think that the expanding awareness of bisexuality and acceptance of bisexuality, both within the queer community and within kind of mainstream straight heteronormative culture, I think that is a huge piece in the puzzle of us getting there. So my answer to anybody that is writing in my comments or sitting alone wrestling with these thoughts of like, am I bisexual if I am mostly attracted to the same sex, but also I could see myself dating like one or two people of the opposite gender? Sure, yes, be that. If you feel like it feels more authentic to you after you've sat and you've wrestled with that, and you're like, you know what, I really more resonate with being a lesbian, or I really more resonate with being pansexual, whatever, wherever you fall on the Kinsey scale, that identity is for you so that you can understand and express who you are to other people. So if you feel like there is a label outside of bisexual that is more aligned with where you feel like your sexuality is falling, go for it. But I think the fact that bisexuality can really catch all for people that kind of fall anywhere that's not on the more extreme sides of the Kinsey scale, I think is a wonderful thing. I genuinely think that this is a good thing for us as people. And I think I understand the fear of kind of misidentifying yourself or misrepresenting yourself, particularly for people that find that they seem to be still in a cycle where they're dating the opposite gender from them pretty consistently, and they feel like they're taking up too much space in the queer community. And that fear is absolutely rooted in this idea that the queer community had to fight so hard and has had such unique experiences of being openly and actively discriminated against, that seeing somebody take on that identity and not have to deal with the exact same level of discrimination, outward or prominent discrimination, and struggle that they have to even find partners, much less find ones that they can stick with, and then be able to take that relationship into marriage or whatever kind of a relationship structure they want to be in, and have that be recognized and accepted and get the same benefits. Like, these are wildly different experiences for many people. But again, I think that the goal for us should be to accept that queerness can exist in so many forms throughout humanity, zooming out, and by allowing people that understand that they are not fitting this strictly heteronormative, I am only ever going to be attracted to the opposite gender, and that is who I am, and that is what society demands I be, and acknowledging within themselves that they have this desire, they have this attraction, and they have this queerness inside of them. I think that that is the next step for us in really freeing society with the idea that it's this us against them. It's the normals against the strangers. Because the more and more I talk to people, and the more I am publicly talking about these topics, the more I realize just the sheer number of people that fall somewhere in a muddy area on that Kinsey scale, and simply don't adhere to this strict idea that they are extremely attracted to, they are simply only attracted to the opposite gender, only attracted to the same gender. And this is all a very deep philosophical ramble for me to say, if you are asking the question, am I bisexual? The answer is probably yes. And what that specifically means for you finding love or finding connection or experiencing intimacy is a secondary question to that identity. Speaking of getting paid for things people say to me, if I had $1 for every time someone told me, when I very casually brought up the fact that I was queer, that, well, everybody's a little bit gay, again, I would not be making YouTube videos for all of you lovely people. I would be living in the woods in a glass-walled cabin, surrounded by nothing but the echoing tones of rare woodpeckers, and sipping coffee on my deck, with not a care in the world. That's where I would be on the wealth spectrum. Anyways, so those have been my thoughts. Let me know if you... Anyways, so those have been my thoughts. What other questions do you feel like you've asked yourself about your sexuality? Or if you have any other thoughts on this, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you guys. And I will be back with another video for you next Wednesday. Love you. Mwah. Ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba. Bye!